let's talk a little bit about whether addiction is hereditary. This is a question that I get asked all the time. So, my dad was an alcoholic, my grandfather was an alcoholic, so therefore I'm going to be an alcoholic. It's got to be hereditary. There's got to be some genetic component that I get that says I'm going to be an alcoholic. That's actually not true. There's no single cause of addiction. Despite all the research that's been done, and you can do all the Google searches that you want to come up with any answer that you want to come up with, you might find one that says, yes, they found the addiction gene. But look at the research, go in there a little bit deeper and take a look, and you'll find that every time they've tried to reproduce that research, they can't reproduce it. There's no such thing that they've found so far. Obviously that can change, but so far they have never found an addiction gene. What they have found in genetics is what we call vulnerabilities. So genetics are involved in things like anxiety, like depression, like schizophrenia, some serious mental health conditions. And when those kind of conditions are in your genetics and in your family history, then it creates a vulnerability to be drawn into addictive behaviours. So I just want to be really clear on that. I like to talk about that in every presentation that I do. There is no one gene. If that was the case, there's been studies that have been done on twins where one twin ends up addicted to something and the other one doesn't. If it was all about the genetics, then obviously both of them would end up heavily involved in addiction. There's a number of contributing factors when we're trying to work with somebody who's developed addiction, and the first of these factors is biological. So like I said before, there's a vulnerability to depression, there's a vulnerability to anxiety, there's a vulnerability to maybe schizophrenia, and they discover that when they use these substances, it helps them. Maybe it numbs the pain, maybe it gets them through an emotional problem, maybe they're feeling really anxious about going to school or going to a party and they have a few drinks and it lowers that anxiety. The second thing that we come across is the psychological. So what do we think about the world? How do we see the world? How do we view things? What's going on in our brain when certain things happen in front of us? There's also, just backtracking, there's also a genetic component, which is our nature. Every one of us is born with a certain nature. Some of us are more outgoing, some of us are more relaxed, some of us are sad, it's just your nature. And however your nature is can dictate how you see the world, how you view things that happen in front of you, right? That affects your psychological, so it's a combination of those things. Then there's the social, which is kind of what we're here to talk about today. The social aspect of things, the environment that you're raised in, the people that you hang out with, the parenting techniques that you experience. Everybody experiences very different parenting techniques depending on the phase of life that parents might be in. Then finally, the spiritual. Depending on the people that you're getting the treatment from, this one's not always there. Obviously, I always throw it in there. I think it's really important. The spiritual aspect of life has a huge impact on a person's journey in either recovery or in addiction, the lack of or the presence of that spiritual aspect. Obviously, I'm going to talk about that today.